The project manager's satellite phone buzzed at 4:47 in the morning. He picked it up without sitting up. 19 years in commercial energy development. 6 states. He was not a man who panicked before sunrise, but he was sitting up now. The voice on the other end belonged to Bradford Ellis, lead counsel for Solara Capital Group, one of the largest privately held solar energy firms in the southeastern United States. Bradford Ellis did not call people at 4:47 in the morning unless something had gone fundamentally, structurally, expensively wrong. "We have a problem." The project manager turned on the lamp. "What kind of problem?" "The transmission corridor. We cannot clear title. Without it, the utility connection is dead. Without the connection, there is no project." "What parcel?" 14 feet wide. 0.6 miles long, straight through the only viable route to the County Line Road substation. Silence. The entire $30 million solar installation, 340 acres of panels, 19 months of permits, 4 rounds of county approvals, was sitting perfectly still. Frozen. Because of 14 feet of old Tennessee grass beside a county road. Who owns it? Bradford Ellis paused, just slightly. A farmer, Harlan County, name of Eldon Pruitt. How much does he want? He hasn't returned a single call. Then came the detail: nobody in that room, nobody in the boardroom, nobody in the legal department, nobody in the private equity consortium with $4 billion under management was ready to hear. Eldon Pruitt had purchased Parcel 11R in the spring of 2003. The price he paid was $8,000, $30 million frozen in place, 19 months of work, the full weight of Solara Capital Group. And it all came down to one man in worn-out boots who had paid $8,000 for a stripe of grass, and had never once picked up the phone when the Nashville numbers called. His name was Eldon Pruitt, and to understand why he bought that land, you have to go back to a courthouse basement in the spring of 2002, March 2002. Harlan County Courthouse, lower level. The Public Land Records Office was a room most people in Harlan County had never had reason to enter. Steel shelving along every wall, fluorescent lights, 30 years of county survey plats rolled into cardboard tubes, a handwritten sign on the counter, "Ring bell for assistance." Eldon Pruitt was 61 years old. He had grown up farming tobacco on 38 acres his grandfather cleared by hand. He had never gone to college. He had never hired a lawyer. He drove a 1994 Ford pickup that had needed a new alternator since October and would keep needing one for 2 more years because there was always something more pressing to spend money on. But once a month, without fail, no matter the season or what needed doing on the farm, Eldon drove to that courthouse basement and spent the morning reading. He read old infrastructure filings, canceled highway proposals from the 1940s and 1950s. Utility corridor surveys from state projects that had been funded, scoped, and quietly shelved when political winds shifted or budgets dried up. He read right-of-way applications that had been filed with great intention and then quietly forgotten. He read county road expansion proposals that had been voted on, argued over, and abandoned before a single surveyor's flag went into the ground. Most of these documents had not been read by anyone other than the original filing clerk in 3 or 4 decades. The county didn't advertise them. Nobody indexed them in any useful way. You had to know they existed, and then you had to care enough to look. His daughter Claire called it his filing hobby. His neighbor Roy said flatly that it was the most boring possible use of a perfectly good Tuesday morning. His wife Norma said nothing about it at all. She just made sure the coffee was strong before he left and had supper ready when he got back. Eldon called it paying attention. Then, in March of 2002, he pulled a cardboard tube from the 3rd shelf and found something that made him stop turning pages. A Tennessee Valley Authority infrastructure study from 1974. The TVA had proposed a regional power distribution corridor running northeast through Harlan County, 14 feet wide, 0.6 miles long, along the eastern edge of Old Kane Road, terminating at a rural substation on County Line Road. The project was designed to connect 2 rural townships to expanded grid capacity. The project was defunded in 1979, but the corridor had never been legally vacated. It still existed on the county plat records as its own parcel, Parcel 11R, 14 feet wide, 0.6 miles long. Taxed separately every year since 1974 at just under $60 annually, owned by no private party, which, in county records language, meant it was still open for acquisition. Eldon read the filing once, then twice, then a third time, very slowly. He drove home without stopping. He sat at the kitchen table until Norma came in from feeding the chickens. Then he got out a sheet of graph paper and drew a map by hand. Old Cane Road, Parcel 11-R, County Line Road Substation. He drew the land on both sides of the corridor. To the west, rough hills, dense timber, steep terrain, no road access, no utility access, impassable for heavy infrastructure. To the east, more than 400 acres of flat, cleared, open ground. Remote land, quiet land, the kind that developers notice before anyone else and begin assembling quietly, parcel by parcel, before prices move. Eldon set the pencil down and looked at the map for a long time. He called nobody. He told nobody. He just started watching. For the next 11 months, Eldon drove past the flat eastern land every single time he went to town. He took the long way when he didn't need to. He slowed down at the same stretch of road and looked without stopping. He was not in a hurry. Hurrying was for people who hadn't already done the thinking. In September of 2002, orange survey flags appeared along the southern boundary at 50-foot intervals. Precise. Professional. A week later, a crew came through with a laser transit and 2 survey tripods. 3 full days of work. Not a word spoken to a single local resident. Then they packed up their equipment and left without a trace. By January of 2003, a 90-acre parcel on the eastern section had transferred through a Delaware-registered LLC to an unnamed buyer. Eldon wrote it down in the yellow legal pad: parcel number, acreage, sale date, LLC name, filing reference. 3 months later, another 80 acres changed hands through a similar structure. Then 120 more. Then a final block of 50 acres that completed the assembly. He tracked every transaction in a yellow legal pad Norma had given him for grocery lists. It never held a single grocery list. Every page was filled with parcel numbers, acreage figures, LLC names, filing dates, and quiet annotations in his own handwriting. He traced the LLC through 4 library visits and 2 calls to the county recorder. The trail ended at a Nashville investment group called Brightfield Holdings. He wrote the name at the top of a fresh page and circled it. Then he confirmed the one thing that made everything else add up. The assembled land, nearly 340 acres, had no direct utility access. The western terrain made it impossible. The only practical route to the County Line Road substation ran along the eastern edge of Old Cane Road, straight through Parcel 11, R, 14 feet wide, 0.6 miles long, still unclaimed in the county records. Eldon set his limit at $8,000 and drove to the county seat the following Tuesday without telling a soul. Hold on. Before we go any further, you are still here. You pressed play, you stayed, and you didn't skip ahead. That tells me something specific about the kind of person you are. The kind of person who finds a story like this interesting already understands something most people never figure out, that the most powerful moves in life are the ones that look like nothing at all from the outside. Eldon didn't borrow money. He didn't take a risk nobody else would take. He simply paid attention when every other person in that courthouse walked right past. That is the whole formula. And it works in farming, in business, in land, and in life. This channel exists for exactly that kind of thinking. Every story we tell is built on the same principle: the quiet long game, the overlooked detail, the patience that outlasts power. So, do this right now, while the thought is still alive. Hit subscribe, not after the video ends, now. Because if you leave without subscribing, the algorithm buries this channel and you will never find it again. That is not a pitch. That is just how the platform works. One tap. Hit the like button too. It costs nothing, and it tells the algorithm this story deserves a wider audience. People like you who actually pay attention and drop a comment below. Tell me where in the world you are watching this from. One line is enough. I read every single comment, and I want to see how far this story travels. Now, back to Eldon, and what happened when he walked through that county land office door. The Harlan County Land Office opened at 8 o'clock. Eldon was at the counter when the clerk arrived. Her name was Sheila. She had worked that desk for 22 years and had processed every kind of land transaction Harlan County produced. She looked at Eldon. She unlocked the door. She went to start the coffee without a word. Eldon told her he wanted to file a purchase offer on Parcel 11R. Sheila set the coffee pot down. She pulled the plat index. She found the parcel. She looked at the dimensions. This strip? 14 feet wide? Along Old Cane Road? Yes, ma'am. She turned the plat so he could see it. Honey, this land has been sitting here since 1979. Nobody has ever asked about it. It is 14 feet of grass beside a county road. Are you certain? How do I file the offer? She walked him through the forms. County assessed value, $4,200. Eldon wrote his offer at $8,000, nearly double assessed value, to ensure clean approval and leave no room for a competing bid. While Sheila processed the paperwork, two men from the county engineer's office moved through the hallway. One of them glanced at the desk, saw the parcel number, and stopped. He leaned in and read the dimensions out loud. They both smiled. Then one said it loud enough for the counter to hear. $8,000 for 14 feet of ditch. I've seen everything now. The other man laughed. They kept walking. Eldon did not look up from the form. He signed. He wrote the check. He folded the receipt into quarters and placed it inside his coat pocket. Because unlike every person in that building that morning, he knew exactly what he had just purchased. Eldon drove home from the county seat with the deed folded in his shirt pocket. Norma was at the kitchen table with her coffee and the morning paper. She looked up and asked one question. Did you get it? We got it. And now we wait. Norma had been married to Eldon Pruitt for 34 years. She could tell the difference between a man who was guessing and a man who was certain. This was certainty. She nodded once, stood up, and put the kettle on. They did not discuss Parcel 11R again for 6 years. Eldon maintained the strip the way he maintained everything he owned, without complaint, without attention. He mowed it twice a year. He paid the taxes every October, $58, always on time, always in person at the treasurer's window. He kept the survey markers clear of overgrowth. He checked the boundary pins once a year in early spring. To everyone in Harlan County, it was a stripe of old grass along Old Cane Road, not worth thinking about. To Eldon, it was the most important thing he owned, and he treated it accordingly. The first offer came in the summer of 2009. A real estate broker from Nashville drove up on a Thursday afternoon. Young, clean clothes, new car. He said he represented a client he was not authorized to name. The client wanted to acquire Parcel 11R. The offer was $75,000. Eldon thanked him. Not interested. The broker said the number could go higher. Eldon said he was sure it could. Then he closed the door. Norma had heard everything through the screen door. She stood in the kitchen with a dish towel in her hand. $75,000. Eldon poured himself a glass of water. I know. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she folded the dish towel and set it on the counter. She never raised the subject again. In 2013, Brightfield Holdings sent a formal letter on law firm letterhead. $140,000. Immediate cash close at 30-day window. Eldon read it twice, folded it, and placed it in the drawer where he kept the deed. He wrote back on a plain note card in his own handwriting. Thank you for writing. Not at this time. In 2017, they sent a lawyer. Silver SUV, Tennessee plate, 3-piece suit on a Tuesday, leather briefcase that had never seen rain. He introduced himself as counsel for a regional energy development consortium. He offered $310,000. Eldon invited him in, poured coffee, sat across from him, let him finish his full prepared statement without a single interruption. Then he looked at the man over the rim of his cup and said 6 words. Tell your client I've been patient, longer than he has. The lawyer left with the same briefcase he arrived with. Eldon opened the yellow legal pad. He wrote the date, the name, the firm, the offer. Then at the bottom of the entry, 3 words. Not yet. Wait. Between 2003 and 2024, Eldon turned down 5 separate purchase offers. Their combined value exceeded $700,000. 5 different attempts by people who thought the number was the argument. Not because Eldon was stubborn or unreasonable or sitting on money he didn't need. He wasn't. The farm had lean years. There were seasons when $75,000 would have made a genuine difference. He knew that. He thought about it every time, but he also understood something that could not be explained in a phone call or a letter from a Nashville law firm. That strip of land was never worth what anyone offered him. It was worth what the right person would eventually need it for. And that figure lived in a permit application that hadn't been filed yet. And in the spring of 2024, they finally needed it badly enough for that truth to matter. In February of 2024, Solara Capital Group filed its final development permit with Harlan County Planning, 340 acres east of Old Kane Road, a grid-scale solar array with a projected output of 48 megawatts, enough to power 14,000 homes across 2 counties. A project nearly a decade in the making, backed by a private equity consortium with more than $4 billion under management. The project had cleared state environmental review, a federal land classification audit, and 3 separate county commission votes. The legal work alone had cost more than $2 million before a single panel was ordered. The Harlan County Courier ran the headline on the front page, "Largest energy investment in county history." Eldon Pruitt read the headline at his kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. He finished his coffee. Then he drove to the planning office and asked the clerk for the full permit application. She handed him 112 pages. He wanted one. Page 47. Transmission corridor plan, utility line routing, substation connection specifications. He found it in under a minute. The proposed line ran 0.6 miles from the eastern boundary of the solar array along the eastern edge of Old Kane Road, directly to the County Line Road substation. The routing had been selected as the only technically and economically viable path to grid connection. It ran straight through Parcel 11R, 14 feet wide, 0.6 miles long, owned by Eldon Pruitt since the spring of 2003. He folded the document and drove home without stopping. That evening, he called his daughter, Claire, 43 years old. Property and land rights attorney in Knoxville, she had inherited her father's habit of reading things other people skipped. "Dad." "What is it?" "I need you to look at a solar development permit." There was a pause on the line. "Parcel 11-R?" Eldon smiled for the first time all day. "You remembered. You showed me that plat map when I was 15, she said. "You told me it would matter someday." He looked out the kitchen window at Old Kane Road running dark and quiet. Someday is here. Claire drove down that weekend. She spread the 112-page permit across the kitchen table. Next to it, the original 2003 deed. Beside that, the yellow legal pad with 21 years of entries. She read in silence for 20 minutes, then she looked up. Their entire transmission corridor is your land. Without documented legal access to Parcel 11R, they cannot run the utility line. Without the line, they cannot reach the substation. Without the substation, the project generates nothing. I know. They cannot build. I know. Does Solara know you own it? Eldon leaned back and looked at his daughter across the kitchen table. They're about to. 3 weeks later, Solara's compliance team hit their first hard stop. County planning flagged the transmission route during a standard pre-approval review. Proof of documented legal access to Parcel 11R was required before engineering approval could advance to the next stage. Solara's in-house attorneys assumed it was a routine title clearing matter, a gap in the records, an old county instrument that needed updating, the kind of thing that takes a day or two and a filing fee. It took 5 days. 5 full business days to trace Parcel 11R from the 1974 TVA filing through the 1979 defunding, through 30 years of county tax records, to a Tuesday morning in the spring of 2003 and a check written for $8,000 by a retired tobacco farmer from Harlan County. 5 days to learn what Eldon had known for 21 years. Bradford Ellis called on a Wednesday morning. Eldon was on the porch with his first coffee. Unknown Nashville number. He let it ring 3 times. Then he answered, "Mr. Pruitt, Bradford Ellis, lead counsel for Solara Capital Group. I'd like to discuss acquiring Parcel 11R. Eldon said nothing. We're prepared to offer $400,000. Cash close. 21 days. Eldon set his cup down. He had paid $8,000. They were offering $400,000. He let the silence sit until it was uncomfortable. Then he spoke. Flat. Unhurried. I appreciate the call, Ellis sounded relieved. Then I can take that as an opening to negotiate? Eldon stayed completely level. It means I appreciate the call. He hung up and called Claire. They offered $400,000. What did you tell them? I hung up. Claire was quiet. Then one question. What do you want, Dad? Exactly. Eldon looked out at Old Cane Road. I don't want to sell it. I want what it's actually worth. Not what they're offering. What it is worth to them right now, today, with their permits running and their clock ticking. Claire took one slow breath. Then I need to make a phone call. Solara Capital Group was about to learn the difference between price and value. Claire called Bradford Ellis the next morning. My name is Claire Pruitt. I represent Eldon Pruitt, legal owner of Parcel 11R. Open your permit file to page 47. Your client's entire transmission corridor runs through my father's land. He will not be selling it. Ellis held his ground. Everyone has a price, Ms. Pruitt. He doesn't want a price. He wants terms. What terms? A permanent transmission easement. $5,200 per month. Indexed to inflation annually. Transferable to his heirs in perpetuity. Those are the terms. There is no counteroffer. Solara went dark for 9 days. Ellis called back. $3,500 a month. 15-year term. Claire called Eldon. He listened, then said 4 words. Tell him no. Permanent. She called Ellis. $5,200, permanent, final. 11 days later, Solara filed a legal challenge in Harlan County Circuit Court, claiming that Parcel 11R had been effectively abandoned after the TVA defunding in 1979, and that Eldon's 2003 deed was therefore void. Claire pulled 50 years of county tax records, from 1974 to 2024, not a single gap. 50 consecutive annual assessments, 50 invoices issued, 50 payments recorded, first by the county, then by Eldon from 2003 forward. $58 a year, every October, in person. She looked at her father. They taxed it every year for 50 years. They cannot now claim they abandoned it. They just dismantled their own case. Eldon reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and placed a folded document on the table. Claire picked it up. The original 1979 TVA defunding resolution, not a copy. The original, county stamped, signed by the presiding commissioner. She stared at him. You have had this since when? March 2002. Since the first day I read the file. 22 years. He had been carrying the complete answer in his coat pocket since before he ever wrote the check. The hearing lasted 40 minutes. Solara's attorney argued abandonment. Claire placed 4 documents on the table. The 1974 TVA corridor filing, the 1979 defunding resolution, 50 years of consecutive tax assessments, and Eldon's 2003 deed. Then she said one sentence. You cannot legally abandon a parcel the county has taxed for 50 uninterrupted consecutive years. The judge reviewed each document. Then he looked at Solara's attorney over his glasses. Do you dispute these tax assessment records? The attorney looked at the stack, then at the gallery, then back at the judge. No, Your Honor, the judge set the papers down. Parcel 11-R is a valid separately taxed parcel of record. The abandonment claim is denied. Case closed. Solara called Claire that same afternoon. Bradford Ellis sounded like a man reading from a script someone else had written for him. Our client is prepared to accept Mr. Pruitt's terms in full. Claire kept her voice completely flat. $5,200 per month, permanent easement, inflation indexed, transferable to his heirs. Yes, we agree to all terms. She called Eldon before she had put the phone back in her pocket. They accepted. Every single term. Eldon was quiet for a moment. Then he asked one thing. When does the first payment come? The easement was signed on a Thursday morning in April of 2024. Eldon filed it himself at the Harlan County Clerk's office. He didn't send a courier. He didn't have his daughter drive down for it. He drove himself, parked in the same lot he had parked in 21 years earlier, and walked through the same front door. When he set the document on Sheila's counter, she looked at the parcel number, then at Eldon, then at the parcel number again. Is this the strip on Old Cane Road, 14 feet wide? Yes, ma'am, same one. She stamped it without another word. But when she handed it back, She shook her head slowly in a way that carried everything she didn't need to put into sentences. Eldon walked out to his truck. He opened the yellow legal pad to the final page, past 21 years of entries, past every name and date and offer amount, past the same 3 words written 5 separate times. He wrote one line: April 2024. Done. The 2 engineers from the county office who had laughed in that hallway in 2003 were both still living in Harlan County. One of them read the local paper story about the easement deal over breakfast on a Saturday morning. He did not read it out loud to his wife. He did not mention it to anyone that day, or the next. Eldon never knew the story ran. He never would have thought to look. Eldon Pruitt paid $8,000 for 14 feet of grass along a county road in 2003. He paid $58 in taxes every single year for 21 years. Never late, never skipped, never questioned. His total investment in Parcel 11R, from the day he signed the deed to the day he signed the easement, was just over $9,200. Solara Capital Group, backed by more than $4 billion in private equity, with a legal team that billed more in a week than Eldon spent on that land across 2 decades, now pays him $5,200 every single month, not for a fixed term, for the rest of his life, and for every heir who follows him. He never raised his voice. He never filed first. He never made a single threat or demand. He never hired anyone until the moment was so precisely right that one sentence in a courtroom was all it took. He never told anyone what he was doing, what he had found, or what he was waiting for. He just waited and maintained, and paid his $58 every October, and waited some more. Some men spend their whole lives chasing money across fields it never crosses. Eldon Pruitt read a file in a courthouse basement, drew a map on graph paper, and let money find its way home. If this story hit something in you, if it made you sit up a little straighter or think about what you might be overlooking, subscribe to this channel right now. This is what we build here. Every story, every week, for people who think the way Eldon thinks. Hit the like button if this one earned it. And drop a comment below, telling me where in the world you are watching from. I read every single one, and I want to see exactly how far this story travels. I'll see you next story.